does it get more?
Welcome to the Alchemist Inkwell.
This is your spiritual, emphasis on spiritual this time, podcast for grounded people. And this time we really are going to take spiritual concepts, big, like high level concepts, and bring them down where we can understand them and put them into daily action, which is something we love to do here.
Yeah, absolutely. In a way that's not going to make you afraid, because a lot
Yes.
of fear, even in the most spiritual places on the internet and very spiritual communities, there's a lot of fear stuff coming up. So we're going to try to like calm that down and bring that down and ground that in. Not saying that it's invalid, but also just saying like, hey, there's other ways to think about it. So,
well, and if you
I'm
have
Emily, by the
fear,
way.
here's what to do with it. And I'm KristaLyn. And we're going to teach you what to do with any kind of fear that may be cropping up right now, because there's a lot of stuff that feels very uprooted and very uncertain. And we can acknowledge that. And we've been investigating our own feelings and fears and things around it. And this is where we've found meaning, purpose, and action items. So,
yeah. First off, I want to say, if you are feeling frustrated or if you are feeling afraid of stuff right now, like, that's okay. You're in the right place to do that. It is a time period where a lot of those feelings are coming up. They're coming up for a reason. It is important to ask yourself the question, though, of why, and get to the journal session. Like in a journal session, get to the root of why it is you're feeling those things, because that is the thing you can actually work on. That is the thing that actually gives you the stuff to navigate. Where if you're just like, it's scary, people suck, I'm very frustrated with everything and everyone, it's not going to let you move forward and help you navigate it on a very personal level. So if you're in a space where you want to feel that, by all means, let yourself feel that. If you're in a space where you'd like to stop feeling that and you want to know how you can move forward and through that, that is a great starting point.
yeah. And it's funny when we talk about Pisces season in this episode, you're going to love my, my recommendation for how to apply the energy. So, because it very much aligns with what you just said. So do we almost want to start with the astrology and then talk about how to do all the other things we're talking about?
I feel like we should. I feel like we should start with the astrology and kind of go from there, because I think it frames a lot of the reason why we're talking about the things we're going to talk about during this week's episode.
Yeah. And it's funny for everybody listening. We came up with this topic because we were feeling it. And then we realized the astrology explains it really well too, which is a perfect example of how astrology and energy, the answer is yes. Like it is both. And the astrology describes the energy, which we are already feeling. And it just gives validation and sometimes constructive movement to the energy in unique ways as well. So it's just a little extra tool for that.
Which is why I think our dynamic works so well, is because I don't know I know what you've taught me from astrology, but I couldn't look at a chart and tell you anything about anything other than like the base level stuff. Whereas I do everything energetically. So I feel like it's really neat. Hopefully for our listeners and people watching us, you guys can see us like validate each other in real time, so you understand how the two go hand in hand and it doesn't feel so far reaching on either side. Hopefully, I think that's my personal goal for a lot of our listeners, because it's really validating when it comes up in either way.
Yeah.
In both capacities.
One of the reasons I got into astrology was because, I'm also a psychic medium. Right. And so I had all of these things, but I have a lot of fixed and earth energy in my chart. And I was like, I need proof, because if I don't give myself proof, 2 days later, I'm going to doubt myself. And it's this horrible cycle. And then I found with astrology, I was able to give myself proof and sometimes even take it deeper with more details and flesh things out. So I am happy to be able to lend that aspect to this dynamic for sure. It's awesome.
I respect how much earth you have, because I have very little. I have even less fire, which is ironic.
Me too.
That's the element I connect with the most, which is weird. But sometimes I feel like that Enya song about like, who can say? That's how I feel like my energy is sometimes.
Yeah.
Which is so earth and water, which I just find very hilarious. So I just want to validate how much I appreciate your earthy, like, need to understand prove space, because to me I'm just like, oh, let's see, it's going to prove itself eventually, so I'm just going to go with it. And it's very nice. So thank you.
Yeah, I've got my grand trines balancing each other in both earth and water. So I've been doing that tug of war with myself my entire life, and this is where I found that balance. So happy to have an outlet to be able to actually share it. Thank you for this amazing thank you for this horrible dynamic we have going on. Oh my gosh, we have the worst synastry. Actually, our charts have pretty great synastry, which is awesome. And that's why it works.
I know. I don't know if we've ever even
trying to
talked
think
about
of
that, but like we have almost like matching placements. It's very interesting.
Yeah,
in
our
a very,
Jupiters
like,
are really
opposite way.
helpful to other places in our charts. It's awesome. It's like it's definitely like a completion sort of thing. Like the lock thing on the bank or the dial really clicked into place for us. Yeah. So anyway, enough about us. Let's talk about the world. Let's talk about everybody. And speaking of that, we are heading into Pisces season. So nothing wants to go into the collective conscious like the Piscean energy. And so here's what I really love about Pisces energy. Pisces is so big picture, it's almost hard to find root or anchor in it. It is the flow of the tide beneath the surface of the water. And it's just so deep and such a mystery and so comfortable in that stillness and that unknowing that it's hard to translate that to someone who's a little bit like me and is like, okay, but what's the data? You don't really get the data as much with Pisces season. It is the typical ruler of the 12th house. So when you think about the way that the zodiacal year is lined up, it begins with Aries season and it finishes with Pisces season. And so Pisces is that culmination, that new beginning, that sleeping before we wake up kind of energy. So Pisces, has a lot to do with the unconscious. And on the 18th, at around 11:44 a.m. Eastern time, the sun will join Jupiter and Neptune in Pisces. And like I said, every week I do, oh my goodness, speaking of Pisces, there goes my mind. Every month I do a forecast of astrology for the month. So if you want to get into the deeper astrological aspect of all of this stuff, there is a video on the Alchemist Inkwell YouTube that covers not only this, but also the United States Pluto return. There's a whole video just for that. We're going to briefly touch on that in this episode, but if you want all the details, that is where you will find all the details. That's where I go ham on my Earth aspects. So with Pisces season happening on the 18th, we are just shifting with the sun moving out of Aquarius and into Pisces. If you are a Pisces sun, your birthday is coming up. Happy almost birthday or happy birthday. So we're going to be experiencing some interesting energy during this month because Jupiter and Neptune are both in Pisces, and Jupiter is the traditional ruler of Pisces. So we are people are very excited that Jupiter is in Pisces. One of the things that we've noticed about that was Jupiter dipped into Pisces last year in the May, June, I think early July period. And a lot of things felt better. And so people were looking forward to this new Pisces cycle with Jupiter actually going through Pisces to stay for a little while until the end of April. And we were all thinking, oh, good, healing, opening things up, having that little bit of freedom. There have been some mitigating factors this time around, but there are some, again, the sun is coming in to sort of punctuate this as well. And now all the planets are direct, which is another interesting factor. So I'm looking forward to, I think we're seeing things moving almost a little bit too fluidly, maybe a little bit more easily and with less trepidation, less precision than we might normally expect. But that is a very Piscean thing. Pisces, as many people have been using the keyword, it dissolves boundaries. And it really has been in this case, because if you look around the world, we don't really know what's going on anymore. We have a lot of things that we're hearing about, but we don't know for sure. And we have to do a lot of our own research in order to really access truth. And we have to do a lot of our own self-investigation and self-interview to access truth and to identify what feels like truth to us. And some of us are in a place where we really align with what feels like our truth. And some of us are in a place where we are feeling so uprooted that we don't know what truth even feels like anymore. And it leads to a bit of anxiety and panic and self-undoing, which is one of the traits of the 12th house in a traditional astrological chart, which again, Pisces can agree with the themes of. So in Pisces season, we're working on healing in a lot of ways. And the best way to do active healing is to, like you said, Emily, interview yourself about your feelings and really dive into those.
Yeah, absolutely. Another great way of doing that, if journaling isn't necessarily your bag, which is totally fair. And sometimes journaling goes too slow for me. So I will just open my phone to video mode and just talk out loud, because that can go faster if I can't type or write quick enough, which is a
It
problem a lot of
happens.
people encounter. Yeah. So if that helps you too, by all means, do it that way and then just rewatch it. You can even transcribe it from there. You can pause if you need it, if you really wanted it in written form, or you can just get the lessons from you speaking out loud and then re-listening to it or rewatching it, which I do fairly often. I do fairly often, especially if I'm having a very dense emotional experience. If I'm really triggered about something, I will do the video method more than I'll do the writing method because I need to get out as fast as possible. So feel validated in that approach if you want to. The other thing I would recommend, especially during this period of time, and I know we're going to talk more about the astrology of it, and we're going to talk more about our recommendations, but if you're interviewing yourself or if you're in this period of trying to figure out your own feelings, I cannot stress enough how valuable creativity is. Whether that is dancing or painting or coloring in a coloring book, it doesn't fucking matter. Just do one. You will get more clarity than you'll expect. It will come in the colors you pick. It'll come in the movements and the songs you listen to. It'll come in the songs you create. Whatever it is, it's going to come out and you're going to have a deeper understanding of yourself, what you're going through and what the emotional experience you're having, how it relates to you and how it matters. It's one of those things that over the last, even though we were stuck at home, we had like a little burst of creativity while we're stuck at home. And then since then, everyone's creativity is kind of shut down. It's been harder for us to find those spaces, harder for us to have it feel valid because a lot of us are energetically burnt out on the world, which is fair. This is a time to reawaken it. This is a time to reaccess it in a very large way. Genuinely, it's a great time to help you navigate and interview yourself with creativity stuff.
Well, and another thing to really build off of that, that's very Piscean is spirituality. And one of the things in 2020 that we had the benefit of, and I remember saying this as it was happening, as we were looking for, why is this happening to us? My first thing that I went to was nature was getting some moments to itself. But also we were being isolated so that we could interview ourselves. We had no other choice but to deal with ourselves, our feelings, our connection to the divine, how we connect to the divine, if we do, how we feel about that. Do we feel judged? Do we feel integrated? Do we feel accepted? All of those things we had to learn ourselves. And then when we reemerged, we had to try to figure out how that fit into society again. And sometimes in some ways we unwrote things that we did when we had that spiritual moment. It's like we all had our own little retreat, if you want to call it that as a nice euphemism. We had our own little retreat during that whole isolation period. And then we came back and some of it we forgot. And some of it we were running away from so much that we just forsook it as soon as we could. And another thing about Pisces,
did is we equated it with all of the negative feelings we had about being forced into it too. So if that is you, just to like highlight that.
Yeah.
Sorry, continue.
And there's nothing wrong with it, right?
No.
How during this Pisces season, with the energy being so abundant, the spiritual energy being accessible so easily right now, so easily with Neptune and Jupiter and the sun hanging out there. Mercury will be there soon too. Mercury's dragging a little bit behind right now. It's a bit slow, but picking up speed. But anyway, with those three there, and I'm looking forward to the new moon in Pisces, got to tell you. I think we already talked about that in our episode that will air next week, but we recorded it early. It's going to be a really spiritual month. And if you're not someone who's looking to be active about your spirituality and to work in coexistence with your spirituality, with your ideals, with what your faith base is, whether that's agnostic or atheist or some kind of other belief practice that, like me, I focus on God or spirituality or creator, wherever that is for you, know it and get acquainted with it. It doesn't have to be the same as mine, but having that confidence in where you stand is going to help you as these tides come rushing in. So I think it's really important to understand your worldview, to interview yourself. And one of the ways that you're going to be able to do that the best is to practice detachment during the ingress of the sun into Pisces. So as the sun skips over into Pisces, the moon will be trine Pluto. And this is a very smooth opportunity to take advantage of this spiritual thing that we've got going on to allow yourself to transform, to practice detachment. Since Pluto is something of death and rebirth, it is letting go of that which we are clinging to in order for something new to come in. So if you can practice detachment and simply observe and interview your feelings, your perspectives, the things that are going on around you, it's as simple as, that made me feel strange, or that made me feel a little bit afraid. Why do I feel afraid? What am I afraid is going to happen? What's the worst that can happen? And when you know that, when your mind will answer for you, then you can say, oh, well, here's what I'll do in that case. Or, oh, that seems rather irrational. It's not actually going to happen. Maybe there's something deeper that I'm worried about. And you can go from there. And I think it's going to be really important with all the zeitgeist stuff that is about to come up and that is already starting to show itself in media, in the world, and in people around us.
Yeah. And if you are having a really, really dense emotional experience and it's hard for you to interview yourself and ask that curious question, focus on feeling it in your body first.
Mm-hmm.
Like genuinely, like, okay, I'm super anxious. What does my body feel like? And feel it. Be like, okay, I'm anxious. This is what's going on. And feel it there until you're calm enough and to allow yourself to ask those questions of why, what was I thinking,
Mm-hmm.
those kind of spaces. Because sometimes it can be really hard in the moment. And neither of us want to invalidate that. Both of us deeply understand.
Yeah.
So feel it in your body first and then translate it if that's necessary. Because the big feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And this can go with joy too. If you're feeling really excited and happy, like where do you feel that? Feel it in your body.
Yeah. And then you can be consciously joyful, which is another thing that is totally something you're allowed to do, by the way. Like we don't always have to focus on the dense feelings. We can be consciously filled with joy and really indulge in that moment. But if you are experiencing or aware of denser feelings right now, totally understandable. Lots of people are coming to terms with stuff. It's around. Because on the 20th, should we move on to that or
let's do it?
Okay.
So we
on
got
the 20th
Pisces first, and then we go into the 20th.
So the 20th, I think also a lot of people are saying the 20th or the 22nd. It's in that range. We have the Pluto return, the first hit of the Pluto return for the United States. Now, I did a whole video on this in its entirety on our YouTube thing. I am not going to spend too much time on this, but as it is a transit that many people are affected by, we'll go ahead and touch on it. Keep in mind, as we're going through this, as people might be talking about it and making a really big deal over it, Pluto is slow. Pluto is the planet that helps us understand when a generation turns over into another generation. It hangs out for a while in the places that it is in. And so we have Pluto at 27 degrees Capricorn, where the United States Pluto was when the Declaration of Independence was signed, which is what we use technically as the birth of the United States. That's under debate, but the chart that a lot of people seem to adjust with what works for the transits that we experience and other things is called the United States Sibley chart. So if you're looking at that, I show it to you in the video on our YouTube, so you can see it there, and I'll explain more about it in that video as well. But basically, it took this whole time for Pluto to get back to where it started when the United States was founded. So you know this is a long journey. And that means that while we will be experiencing some interesting headlines and some very quick changes and pivots and, crisis moments, in that a crisis brings transformation, it breaks something in order to renew it. We will see some of that happening because we are allowing something to fall apart so that we can build something better and more aligned with what's working in the future. If you imagine, this is infrastructure is a great analogy. If you build a bridge, it lasts for a good long while, but eventually it needs to be replaced. It needs to be rebuilt. It needs to be maintained. So you tear down the bridge and build a new bridge. Because why keep fixing something that's just going to continuously need to be fixed? It's like when a car gets so broken that you might as well buy a new car. Consider that a Pluto return for your car experience.
And it's important to note too, with Pluto return, it's like upper level stuff, especially in this particular one. So though we're like, it is kind of like crisis energy. It's crisis for large structure. It's not crisis on a personal level. Some other stuff is, different returns, different things like that can be crisis on a personal level. There's other things that can bring that in. That's not the energy we're talking about. We might have ripple effects on a personal level. If you're connected to collective, you might feel that crisis energy, but it is not, hey, you will have to solve some problem. It is, hey, watch this because the structure itself is going to have some crisis energy.
And keep in mind as well that this is a Pluto return, not for the whole world, but for a single country, country that interacts with the whole world. Therefore, those who interact with it may be noticing that it's going through stuff. But other than that, it's
a single country that's the baby. It's where
do we all not go through stuff? Yeah, we're just,
You know?
it's like when your teeth are coming in and you're a toddler. It's like, this hurts, but I can't explain it to anybody else and I can't communicate it, but I'm gonna like cry about it, and
Mhm.
that's valid. It's a feeling to be going through. So it's a 248-year cycle that we are initiating at the same time that we're finishing and beginning a bunch of other cycles that happen to be completing around the same time. This is a time to be alive. I'm actually quite honored to be here for this, for all of it. So yeah, we'll be seeing a lot of notable events.
And admirable way to feel. Let me just say
Well,
that. If you're
thank
not
you.
honored, that's okay. I go alternate between I'm honored and I'm so fucking tired.
Yeah,
That's what
I will
alternate
say,
through.
as someone who
Ugh.
wants to save the world and wants to live an adventure, I'm honored to be here. As someone who has to live daily life and is sometimes feeling constricted to things that are going on right now, sometimes the emotion is more of I hate it here. And I get that in the meme sense, everybody, just clarifying. Yeah, in the meme. But I choose when I can navigate through those moments to remember that I'm honored to be here, that this is a time of transformation and that's what I want in life. So I want to be a part of it. I'm in the room where it happens and it's happening. So that's nice. So yeah, a lot of notable events, but it is a process that's going to be unfolding and will continue to unfold rather gradually. In fact, the Pluto return itself, this is the first time Pluto will interact with the same degree as the United States Sibley chart, but it's going to do that 2 more times this year. And it'll get gosh darn close in 2023 as well. So dates to be aware of, June 11th, it'll be retrograde. So it'll back up again, touch on the stuff. We'll get an initial, like, this is what we're dealing with situation on the 20th, 22nd. On June 11th, we will revisit that. And we'll be, because Pluto doesn't really move very far, it's just going to be like hovering over that spot. So it's hitting it, backing up a little bit, but staying really close. So it's just going to be this low hum throughout the year where we visit it and revisit it, and it's at the back of our minds and we're building on it. And December 28th is the last exact hit in 2022. And then with the retrograde in 2023, it'll come close but not exact on October 10th. That's as close as it'll get again. And then it goes direct and we won't have to worry about that same level of intensity. We'll begin moving forward. Again, if you want more details, check out that video.
I was telling Krista, for me, it's been really interesting because I was trying to look at the energy, and this is never exactly how it looks to me, but I always try to give you guys a like real world relatable description because that's the closest analogy I can give you. For me, and I don't want you guys to have any like negative connotation around this, it's like one of two things. Either we're a cannonball and the start of 2020 like loaded us into the cannon and we've been like gradually moving towards the opening, which has been us getting increasing clarity, even though things have been feeling tighter. We're getting closer to the opening and seeing the outside and understanding what's on the like bright side of this. And then we're finally, after the 20th starts, like, or 22nd, I think it's what it energetically, that's what it looks like to me. We kind of get to actually get shot out of the cannon, and then we'll see everything clearly. You're still flying through the air, you're a cannonball, but like you still get to, now you see the whole picture. You're not inside this like dark tube like slowly moving forward. So like that's one analogy that I like kind of have for you. The other one would be like if you're going, imagine you're in a little boat and we've been going up this big wave that started really at 2020 and we've been going and going and going. We're finally going to crest the top of it and see what's on the other side. You still have to go down the back side of it, but you're going to see the other side. So a lot of that increased clarity, understanding. For me, it looks like that's when we get to start our actual grieving process for what all the things we've had to go through and lose and change and discover about ourselves over the course of the last, like 3 years, really, 3-4 years, really, not just the 2020, but like it's going to be like finally almost like breathing room to be like, wait a second, we just went through something, like let's actually deal with that. Let's actually look at that. How did that make us feel? There's parts of it that made us feel awesome. We love who we are now. And there's parts of us where like, man, I did also like that person at one period in time. Maybe I should take some time to grieve for them. So when I look at the energy, that's what I'm seeing. And I hope those make sense. Because again, I don't want anyone to be scared because it's nothing terrifying. It's not where I'm like, hey, this is freaking me out. It's more of just like, that is what it looks like energetically. So in ways it's relieving because we get the clarity that we want. From what I can see anyway.
Yeah. And on the 22nd, it still will be right around there, but it is on the 20th, 2733. So for anybody who's looking for exact dates, this is my Earth fixity coming out again. It's like, no, the detail is, I got this. Because I remember when I first looked at it, I was like, everybody's talking about the 22nd. Is that just because numerologically it's charged up energy, which it is.
22. Yes, it is.
Yeah. So it's still there, trust me. But the actual hit date, if we don't want to go totally into the like explosive drama of it, we can just acknowledge that we will have already felt it for 2 days at that point. And then the 22222, which 22 is my favorite number. It is a master number in numerology. I am studied in numerology. I totally get that too. But this is a shared space, not a all on one pinhead kind of thing. So I do want to make sure that that I don't blow things out of proportion unintentionally by just sandwiching everything together. But yeah, so like I said, there's the video where you can get all the details. I go through all the nitty gritty details. I had a really good time with it. After that, because there is an after that, we will survive to see the 23rd. That is when Mars will sextile Neptune, which may give you some confusions. Like if you're thinking, I really want to move forward with this, things are direct now, like, let me go, let me burst forth. The next steps may not be super clear. And the opportunity that presents is practicing your knowing, practicing your gut instinct, practicing following your instincts. That's a great opportunity. And then the very next day, because Mars and Venus are traveling together right now, Venus will form the sextile with Neptune as well, which can create a great opportunity for daydreaming and alignment between your interests and your dreams and feeling something into existence, knowing the feeling enough to be able to make it happen, to be able to figure out how you can actually bring that into the world. So if you're a writer, if you're an artist, this is a great time to be channeling in some art and seeing what that really shows you. It's an idea of where the day before we were following our instincts, following our gut. This time we get to now translate it to following our heart, which is nice. And at the same time, Mercury will square Uranus, which is going to bring some small surprises that may correct your course or obstacles that might distract you depending on where you're at. So if you notice that stuff keeps getting in your way and you're like, why does stuff keep stopping me? It may be indicating that you are correcting your course. So take a pause and say, okay, if this way's not working, how can I navigate? Like if Garmin were saying, you missed your turn. You didn't miss your turn. You just have a better route. They've recalculated to find you a more efficient route. So this is an opportunity where the divine is saying, hey, we have a better way to do this. We're done with this road that we're full steam ahead on. Let's go that way. And that's all you have to do is just say, I'm willing to make changes. So I totally forgot to mention the affirmation that I have for the Pisces season, which includes the entire month.
I was like, we have an affirmation that was supposed to be in there somewhere.
Yeah, I allow my consciousness to expand into my daily life. So making conscious action, conscious decisions, which is really great segue into the main topic that we want to kind of pull into this. Knowing this context, what do you do in your daily life to feel like you have a sense of control and to not fall victim to I want to say nihilism, which is probably an accurate word to use.
I was gonna say, I don't think you're wrong.
I don't think I'm wrong either. I just feel bad saying it. To not fall victim to despondency. We want to talk about radical kindness. I'm super excited to talk about this because radical, yes. Kindness, yes. So that's another Uranian thing. Radical.
It is very Uranian.
Yep.
Krista came up with this thought and I just loved it right away because it's something I have actively practiced quite a bit as much as possible. But we came up with some fun examples. We found an article on Reddit that had some fun examples and we really just wanted to talk about it because it can be so easy to feel helpless when everything feels so big. Radical kindness can drastically not only shift your energy and the energy of the people around you, but it can shift everyone's energy who you help, which creates such a large impact energetically. And before we even talk about it, I want you to just think of a time when you saw someone do something kind for someone else and what that made you feel, even though you were not maybe the
recipient.
Thank you. I was like, there is a word there that is not. Yay, Pisces. Okay. But really, like, think about that. And that is how much impact you can have on even people who view it, people who tell you about something that nice that happened to them. That level of radical kindness is the way that you can really reclaim some direction and some energy that you want to have in your life. It's also a way of living just really consciously, because you're consciously choosing how you're going to structure your day. You're
Mhm.
consciously choosing how you're going to move through the world. And
Yeah.
that level of consciousness is very beneficial to you as a person.
And you may think, what's radical about being kind? But right now, choosing to actively be kind in situations where it would be easier to remain either quiet and out of the way, or
Mhm.
just to avoid interaction at all. Kindness is more radical now than it has ever been.
Mhm.
And so, we'll start with an easy one. What's an example of radical kindness right now? It's choosing, even if you're in an uncomfortable situation or in public or around other people who aren't doing the thing, because that's another thing. It's radical because not everybody's doing it. So it is
Mhm.
radical. So radical kindness is choosing to be kind, even when someone's not being kind to you, choosing to be kind, even though it's not like necessarily called for, like no one's
Mhm.
hurting actively in front of you, but you're going to show them that extra kindness anyway. A place that I love the idea of this is, when you're dealing with people who are working. And this is
Yeah.
something you would usually bring up on like a Black Friday, right? People are working, be kind to them. They're doing this, extra effort. It's an extra effort right now to be doing a lot because we're all going through things. And then to be in certain situations where you're asked to be radically kind as a law or as a rule, and maybe also deal with people who are not being so kind to you. It's putting on your customer service face for literally your fellow human being, and
Mhm.
letting your care and your love extend to them because you can and because you have that choice to,
Yeah.
rather than saying, I'm at work right now and I have to be nice to you. So how may I help you? People do have to be in that situation. There are people out there who are at work right now and they have to be nice to you because their livelihood depends on it. Wouldn't it be easier for everybody if you could be the nice one to them? Because I will
Mhm.
tell you, even before this year, working in customer service, I worked at Disney World over Christmas in an area that you didn't have to pay to get into. People were not always kind. I was shoved into those pinwalls on more than one occasion. Someone would like run their baby cart into me to push me out of their way. And so practicing radical kindness in a world that is not always initially kind to you.
Mhm.
I learned to do that at Disney because you got to make the magic anyway. And that's really what it is. You're making magic for this person and you're brightening their entire day simply by smiling, simply by acknowledging their right to comfort in a situation. All of
If they're
those
wearing a
things.
name tag, use their name. If they have their
Yeah.
pronouns listed, use their
Mm-hmm.
pronouns. I cannot stress enough how kind of an act that is.
Yeah.
You are treating them like the actual person that is
You're
there and not some
seeing them.
service that they're providing.
Yeah. You are seeing them. Again, you
Mhm.
know, there were some people, Disney being a great example again, because we wore our name tags, and most of the time it was actually my name, unless I forgot my tag. But when someone would call me by my name, it would just be like, oh, I can be comfortable around you because you've put us on a first name basis. You've acknowledged me as a human being for the name that I have. And the same thing with pronouns. If they're listed, use them. I mean, it's a conscious thing, but that's what's radical about it. We
Mhm.
have people all around who are asking for this to help them feel safe and comfortable and like they can navigate the world in an accepted way. You can be the one who says, hey, I see that you're going through a lot of changes right now. I see that you're putting yourself out there and making yourself vulnerable. I'm going to be the one who makes you comfortable.
Yeah. I
Oh,
want to reframe this too. For some reason, this just clicked for me, and I asked my guides if I should share it, and they said yes. So I'm going to just like throw that out there. We were talking a little bit before we hopped on about how the U.S. has been built on revolution and big changes and conquest and all of these things. And part of the Pluto return is the fact that there isn't a big energy of that with the US at this point in time. This is how we, on an individual basis, decide how we're going to take that energy and move it.
mm-hmm.
On an individual basis, we're saying we're going to revolutionize the way people are treating each other. We're going to,
Yeah.
that's the next revolution, is showing up in this kind space, showing up with this consciousness and changing that way. If we all can do that, that will shift the energy drastically through this return period.
Yeah.
And
I
that
mean,
that little thing like this.
Yeah,
That's it.
seriously. The United States is the classic archetype of a rebel with a cause
Yeah.
until it loses its cause. And
Mm-hmm.
there are several conditions and circumstances that are coming up right now where people or the country or what have you are feeling like they are a rebel without a cause, but they're still a rebel. So what do? They're looking for a cause. They're looking for something to
Mm-hmm.
rebel against. They're looking for an outlet for this energy that they identify so fiercely with.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you are, be a rebel. Like, I love you.
Yeah.
You're a rebel. That's fantastic. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I have some Uranian connections in my chart too. I like the idea of being a rebel, but today in this climate or in any climate, like again, this was as true in 1995 as it is now. You
Mm-hmm.
can be a rebel by being rebelliously kind in the face of
Mm-hmm.
adversity.
Yeah. When people want to choose to not be, or when people are so burnt out, rebel by being super kind.
Yeah.
It's very active. It's not passive. It's very active.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to touch on that too, and I just want to highlight this, energetically and physically, the strappedness that every single business is feeling for employees is not going away. So
Not
choosing
for
to
a
show
while.
up with kindness for those people, for
Mm-hmm.
people who are working, for yourself when you're working too. If you have to work with people, I empathize and love you. But it's a big way of shifting in a circumstance that's not necessarily changing immediately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are going through again this whole, especially in the United States, but again, there's a lot of collective motion happening that we're all feeling
Mhm.
with this whole hum of change and structural restructuring. We're still kind of feeling the effects of the crucial transits from last year between Saturn and Uranus. So again,
Mhm.
revolutionizing our structures. That was global.
Mhm.
That was societal. So we're still feeling that kind of hanging around. It's still a little bit within orb in
Yeah.
astrology, and we're dealing with that. We're waiting for that to separate enough where we can find our footing.
Mhm.
And all of us are. We all are. And some of us are in positions where we get to be in our comfort zones more frequently than others.
Yeah.
And so it's our privilege and our rights and a
Mhm.
gift that we can then extend that to someone else. We can
It's a
give the gift
huge
of comfort
gift.
to people.
It's a huge, huge gift. And I love
Yeah.
that you refer to it that way because it is genuinely a
Mhm.
massive gift and privilege to do that. The other thing, the next place I would say to extend kindness and show radical kindness, show it to animals in any capacity that you
Oh my
can.
gosh, yes.
In the summertime, I always put water out for the bees.
Yeah.
I have a bee thing.
Yeah.
I have a bee thing. I love the bees. I have bee tattoos. I love bees, very much so. And they need our help a whole ton, of course, but also just every animal that you see. Every animal that you see, if you can,
Mhm.
carry dog treats, or if you can be kind to your neighbor's dogs, or, even just if there's squirrels around and you can put out a bird feeder or a squirrel feeder or something like that. Just those little things that show that you're showing emphasis to those that don't necessarily maybe aren't doing well because of climate change, or
Yeah.
just to brighten the owner's day and the dog's day. Like, it's not a hard thing to do, to just show that little extra kindness, even to those beings that can't always necessarily reciprocate it.
Well, and it's a great point that I saw in an article at some point. I wish I could credit it, but I don't remember who said it. I think it was in the context of being vegan, but that's certainly not the point. You do not have to be a vegan in order to show kindness. But one of the things is when you're showing kindness to animals, you're practicing it at that level. And it's going to end
Mm-hmm.
up on all the other levels too. You're going to be
Mm-hmm.
kind to other people. You are integrating yourself in oneness with nature,
Yeah.
and God expresses himself, herself, themselves with nature.
Mm-hmm.
Spirituality comes through nature. I once
Mm-hmm.
channeled into earth and asked certain questions, and I was given the insight that animals are watching us and they're watching
Mm-hmm.
over us, and they're kind of helping us as guides on what decency looks like.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you have to give up meat or anything like that. That's, everything in moderation, whatever.
If
It
you
doesn't
want
hurt.
to.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt if depending on your health conditions, your preferences, what
Right.
you feel called to do. I'm not here to convert anybody to any kind of ideology,
Yeah.
but it doesn't hurt to be kind to what's right in front of you, whether that's
Mm-hmm.
an animal, a mineral, or a vegetable.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Because by the way,
I
we
am.
are animal. We
Yeah,
fall into the animal
totally. I
category.
know. I'm a diehard vegetarian and I'm almost a vegan. I'm very, very close. And so, like,
Same.
my heart, and part of it was energetics, to be totally honest. And
Yeah.
I've been this way basically since I was 10 years old. My mother was a saint because I came home, was like, never eating animals again. And she was like, okay, here we go. And totally incorporated that and honored that. So if that's something you're drawn to, it's a great time to explore it. I can personally tell you from very depth of experience, there has never been a better time in history to be a vegetarian. From
Yeah,
the time
especially
I
with
started
supplies.
to now, it is completely different experience. You can actually find very amazing things. So if that is something that has been on the fence and that feels aligned for this change now, I do just want to say you are supported energetically with the world. It is in no way a requirement. You can be kind to animals and beings in an entirely different way, but that is a radical act of kindness because you are going out of your way to show something conscious kindness on purpose when you're choosing to do so, which is just really, really incredible. It really is. Yeah, that's, I think, super important. Also, and just connecting with the people at work. If you can tip big,
Yeah.
please. If you can, if you're in a financial place too, do it. No one's paid enough. Let's just put it that way.
Well, and you can make someone's day with a nice note, which is great, but also with how people are adjusting and sometimes struggling, giving your energy and saying, I put my worth in you and your life outside of this place, which is what a tip does.
Yeah.
It's saying, I value your livelihood here and outside of here. I see that you're a human. I acknowledge that you have family. I acknowledge that you have a life separate from this service that you've offered and provided for me. That is what you're saying with a tip. It's not this obligation. And right now, you know, our structure here in the United States, at least, a lot of people rely on that solely for their livelihoods. So it is just almost a sign of respect to that other person. And that's okay. You can respect everybody else the same way as you respect yourself. If you are, if someone else is rubber and you are glue, right? And you respect them, that respect's going to come back to you. If it takes one to know one and you respect someone, that respect's going to come back to you. It is the golden rule of treating other people the way you would like to be treated. That is radical kindness. And that's what I was raised on. I don't know about other people, but credit to my parents for that golden rule that shows up in literally every ideology, theory, and religion that you can find. So it's definitely something that has been around for a long time and it works.
Yeah. Also, understanding consciously and on purpose that minorities, specifically minority women, specifically Black women, are fucking tired because they've had extra battles. And I am not trying to speak for them in any way. And I'm not trying to say, like, I am a white woman. I know I'm incredibly privileged. But it's just, I always want to call consciousness like, hey, like, this would be a great time to educate yourself. Like, read books that have been written, watch videos that have been done. Don't ask of them more than they have already given to educate you on these topics. It's time for, that is an act of radical kindness too, is to choose consciously that you're going to go educate yourself on different issues affecting communities that are not your own, that they have been trying to educate you on. They're fucking tired. And I know that is very true. I've seen it all over evidence, and I'm, again, not trying to speak for anyone. I just want to advocate, like, do your own research, doing that and showing up in those spaces with an open listening heart. That is radical kindness too.
And that research can be super fun. One of the ways I'm doing that research right now is I'm reading fiction from perspectives that are not my own. I've been reading a lot of TJ Klune lately. I'm actually currently reading Red, White, and Royal Blue. And I'm so thoroughly enjoying them. They're helping me realize so I'm not too far into it, so I don't want to like hear any spoilers because I really am enjoying it. But it helps to normalize something for you because you're allowing this safe space where you are not in a position to be judged. You are just witnessing a story unfold from a perspective of the person that knows it best. And you get to be entertained and you get to see the most human and heartfelt side of it. And that's perfect. And these TJ Klune and stories like Red, White, and Royal Blue, I will tell you, can show you things that may not be entirely familiar to you without triggering any kind of unconscious programming you may already have. So you
Yeah.
can actually rework that in a safe and entertaining and comfortable and literally joy-filled environment. It's just you
Yeah.
and the story. And like literally that's why we do the Forgotten Storytellers. We have 12 people in our current cohort of authors who are doing the same thing for their own themes and creating stories like this. So do not worry. It is becoming more and more prominent. We are seeing to cultivating that as much as we possibly can. But there are already books out there. And that's why we do our book reviews and our bookend episodes. And Emily does a great job with reviews on TikTok and things about high vibe books. So definitely keep those in mind, because the voices are out there. They are finally being acknowledged. And now we have access to their sides of the story.
Absolutely. I'm currently reading Legendborn.
That's on my list.
It's really, really, really good. And it's a YA novel about a Black woman. It's an Arthurian retelling, which makes me happy. So I recommend that. But the next on my list is Cemetery Boys, which I believe the lead is transgender Hispanic, maybe Black. I'm not 100% sure. Main character. So again, this year I've very consciously and on purpose chose to diversify my fiction reading. That is a perfectly acceptable way to do that. I also have some nonfiction books. I'm reading stuff by Malidoma Patrice Tomei, who was a very powerful Black voice in the spiritual community. Just different things like that you can incorporate to give you an outside perspective. This isn't on you space. Amplifying those voices means to listen. And I want to always acknowledge that, especially right now. It means to listen. That's why I keep being like, I'm not trying to speak for anyone. I genuinely am not. I'm just encouraging you to go listen to people who have experience in the communities that we don't. That is an act of radical kindness. Genuinely it is. It will make you a better person. It will make you a better fellow human. It will also help to amplify the voices that need to be amplified, because holy fuck, do they need to be amplified? Like, let them be.
And to anybody who's feeling unseen by hearing this, just because you're amplifying another voice that needs to be amplified does not mean that voice will outpace you or outshine you or dull your light in any way. It's just letting all the light be spread around like a ray rather than a laser beam.
Yeah.
So it's giving everybody the opportunity for light, and we will all shine just as brightly as each other in our own unique ways. Like I think back to The Incredibles, and when everybody's super, no one will be. That's not true, because there's different versions of blessed. There's different versions of super. Everybody is so unique, and I can prove it by your astrology chart. If you are questioning that, let's talk, because I can show you your brand of uniqueness. I can show you where there is a space for your light to shine. This is a big world. We can share it. We can treat each other the way we want to be treated. And we can each shine confidently and acknowledge our own brightness without dimming another person's, or without dimming our own in order to shine someone else's. It's a candle doesn't go out just because it lights another candle. That flame still stays there. I think that's really important to remember.
I also want to talk a little bit about also people who have disabilities and respecting them and showing them kindness. I don't really talk about this a whole ton, mostly because though it is partially my story, it is not fully my story. But my son has cerebral palsy. And so we have spent a lot of time in children's hospitals, and him growing up, he's 11. And he's a badass child. But it has given me a crash course in holy shit, the amount and range and far-reaching levels of disabilities in our world. And right now, people with disabilities, and also people who love people with disabilities, are really tired, and they are oftentimes fighting for things like just wear a mask, just do the base level of kindness so that they won't die. And that is a way you can be very, very kind, and just on a very personal level. And this is a deep experience, and I know it can be polarized. I know all of that, but if you can show kindness to kids who are sick, that's a big deal.
Or even
people who are
anybody.
sick in general.
Yeah.
But if you need to think about it in the sense of like, there are kids that are very, very sick, walking around in the world and just trying to live and exist. And if you can make that easier for them in any way, please do.
And you may not see it. It may not be super apparent. You might not be able to point it out as soon as you see somebody. It's not always obvious. So just assuming that everybody needs love and doing the most loving thing that you can do in a moment. And just, it's just like wearing sunscreen, you know, like I'm going to wear sunscreen today because the sun's out, or I'm going to take some sunscreen because someone might've forgotten it. It's the same kind of thing.
And if you are blessed and lucky enough to not be immunocompromised or disabled or in any way, please acknowledge that privilege and see what you can do with it to help those who are not blessed in the same way as you. That's just my big one in that space. It's very big personal feels.
It reminds me, there's a parable in the Bible, the talents. Don't bury your talents, spread them around, give them to other people, use them.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you are talented, talents were like a currency in this sense. But if you are given the talents of health, if you are given the talents of ease of access, or just joy in a moment, and you see someone else who could use a little pick me up, or who could use someone saying, hey, I want to, you know, acknowledge you. Cool. That's awesome. That's amazing.
And what might be a minor inconvenience for you is a life-saving gift to someone else. Period. And it's very, very real.
Yeah.
Something I see every day in a super big way. Headphones are slipping, but yeah. So that is another way you can act, you know, practice very radical kindness. Another thing to do that's very radically kind, check in on your neighbors, check in on your friends, check in on your family. Even just a simple like, hey, thinking about you. Hope you're doing well. Is there anything you want to talk about today? Or like, is there anything that like no one's been listening to that you want to share? Like, if you have the emotional and mental and space capacity, which I know sometimes we don't, and that is totally fine too.
Yeah, we're not saying you have to do this all day, every day.
Oh God, no. We all get to be people too. But if you have that space, just as you think about it, if you can just send a quick text, even if it's just an emoji or anything like that, where you can just be like, hey, you're seen to someone, that is radically kind. That is radically kind. Of course, if it's triggering for you, don't do it. If you don't have the space to do it, don't do it. But if you're like, Krista texted me yesterday, just like, hey, thinking about you, hope you're doing okay today. We talk to each other constantly all the time anyway. And it meant so much to me. It meant so much to me, even though she was going to see me today. She was going to see me 2 days, but she's going to be out here next week visiting me. It doesn't matter. It meant a lot. Like, oh, thank you for just checking in. Cause you never know. I mean, think about how many times people check in with you. It's probably not very often. And you probably would really like that to happen, which will happen when you put that energy out there. And you doing that for others, again, will bounce right back to you, and so on and so forth. It just keeps growing. That is a really simple way that you can be very radically kind. Yeah. And if you walk by and see your neighbors, like wave, say hello. Like if you're outside, like, how you doing? Just check in, like acknowledge them as a person that is near you. Of course, if they're, you know, not necessarily aligned with you, you don't have to have a long conversation, but just being like, I see you as another human being.
Yep. Nothing beats the feeling of being seen, loved, and invited to share yourself with others. Because like it's so easy to feel like, I want to talk about this. I'm so excited about it, but nobody asked me for it. So it's going to feel like bragging, boasting, oversharing, whatever. But if someone says, hey, how's it going? You look excited. What's going on? You get immediately, the energy is so different. And I get this very personally in my life. But it is just such a different feeling when someone says, I'm interested in what you have to say. Would you mind telling me more? And it's that easy. I think there was an episode of The Middle where they're going through a social skills class, and it's, I don't know much about that, but I'd be interested to hear what you have to say. And it was just that canned response that can really open up doors and avenues and help make someone stay.
Same way as like compliment someone on something that's not physical.
Yeah,
like
we talked about that last week.
Right. Do it one time a day, just one time a day. Compliment somebody on something that is not physical. It is so incredibly kind. It also starts a conversation. Ask them a question about themselves and then compliment something they said in their answer in some capacity, even if it's just like, wow, thank you for sharing that with me. I appreciated you being so honest. Like, even if that's all you can muster, that's more than enough. It is such a rebellious act.
And it also
rebellious act
brings worth
to shit to do it.
Yeah. It also brings worth to someone outside of their physical worth, because you're not just pretty. You're beautiful. Don't get me wrong. I can feel the energy of everybody who's listening to this. I see you. I feel you. You are beautiful, but you're also magical. And wouldn't it be great if we could acknowledge that as well and let that be more real? That's one of the things I like about the books, like the TJ Klune books and Red, White, and Royal Blue, and the relationships that I'm reading is they're so nice to each other. Like these people are so nice to each other. And I admit and I acknowledge that those relationships, especially in these books, are hard won. So they are appreciating them. But wouldn't it be great if we all appreciated our relationships without needing to suffer loss in order to appreciate them, without needing to fight for the right to have those relationships? Like let people know that they are loved and seen for whoever they are, whatever they're doing, wherever they're coming from, whatever their truth is. It's not hurting you. It's actually only going to make you feel better. And it's going to really light someone else's candle. And I just love that so much. I'm going to like pull back a little bit. Sorry, guys. Soapbox. Yeah.
No, I think it was beautiful. I think it was a great soapbox. And the one last thing I wanted to touch on as far as radical kindness is give yourself radical kindness too. Go outside and be in the sun, please. Just even if it's for 5 minutes, just go be in the sun. It's going to give you the vitamin D that you need. It's going to do those things. If you can play with your dog for a minute, or if you can dance, or if you can do something where you feel good about yourself, compliment yourself in the damn mirror about something that's non-physical. You can compliment yourself about physical stuff too, but non-physical stuff. Forgive yourself in the mirror. This one is huge. If there's something that, like, if at night, right before you go to bed, if you can just forgive yourself for one thing, it's going to start this ripple effect of being kind to yourself and seeing yourself as not flawed or not having made these mistakes, but just being a person and just being a genuine, like, it's so radical to do that to yourself. And it's not just like self-love and self-care. You guys know how I feel about the term self-care, but it's genuinely just showing up for yourself, to be kind to yourself too, because you also deserve it. Big time. When people are struggling in their relationships, come through a couple different times, like in channeling sessions, etc., of like write down and write to yourself everything you wish your partner would say, and then see if it would be a possibility for them to say it. And if it's not, and that's a deal breaker, then that's your own path. Like, you can acknowledge that, but it also makes you feel really good because finally someone has said everything that you'd wanted to say. Like, that's another way you can be really radical. So that's my soapbox too. That and the disability thing are my soapboxes. But yeah, thank you guys for listening to this. Please go check out Krista's astrology recap for the month and the Pluto return on our YouTube. It's really valuable information. It will help you navigate things with consciousness and grace, which is what we all need right now. Give yourself grace as stuff comes up. Let yourself feel things, let yourself experience things. Find people who will listen when you talk. Even if it's just online communities where you can have a voice, you can post whatever it is, like, that's more than enough. But it's really important that you have that space right now. We value you a lot. And if you haven't heard that today, you matter and you're important. So I want to make sure you know that.
Yep. And while you're at it, go make some magic. Yay! We're getting so good at that. Oh, yay us.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.